Hey everybody, welcome, welcome. It's finally here. It is Gettysburg 159 and you're with the American Battlefield Trust. I'm Garry Adelman. We got Kris White behind the camera. We got other guests coming on soon, and this is going to start a series of live videos that we'll be doing on Facebook and hopefully on YouTube as well, all around the battlefield. Make sure you're checking both. Make sure you're checking out our partners, namely on this one, Ancestry and Fold 3, who are great partners on this, the Gettysburg National Military Park, the Gettysburg Foundation. You're about to meet one of those other partners as well, and the Adams County Historical Society. And we're on the first day's battlefield. You already saw that we have been posting videos, some stuff that we pre-shot. We've kind of covered Barlow's Knoll and Rock Creek and Oak Ridge, and now we're on the first day's battlefield. So I really think we need to summarize things a little bit before we bring on our next guests, okay? So before we do that, make sure you're interacting with us and you share this with your friends so as many people can engage with American history and Gettysburg 159 as possible. This is a three-day battle. I think you know that already. And on July 1st, 1863, there's going to be about 18,000 Union soldiers that are going to fight and be defeated by 28,000 Confederate soldiers. It's not going to go well for the Union, but maybe there's a silver lining in there. We'll talk about that later. Specifically, what I want to do is drill down so that we can talk about brigades, regiments, and soldiers. But first, we got to talk about Corps. This battle begins with A.P. Hill's 3rd Corps coming down the Chambersburg Pike. We are looking generally west right now, and you can imagine the advanced elements. Heath's division showing up, specifically 2 brigades. Archer's brigade on one side of the road, Davis's brigade on the other side of the road. Mississippians here, Tennessee, Alabama over there. Well, you got some cavalry slowing them down. Then the Union 1st Corps arrives, a full division under Wadsworth's division, with the Iron Brigade on that side of the road, Cutler's brigade on this side, and Cutler and Davis fight each other here over near the railroad cut that you can see barely traversing the ground where those trees are there. But eventually, you're going to have the Union successful on the other side of the road where the Iron Brigade pushes across, and then the Southerners achieve some success here, but both sides break off. That's the morning action, post-cavalry, that's the infantry fight. Now after that, you're going to have more things happening, namely the rest of Heath's division shows up. That's Pettigrew and Brockenbrough, 2 more brigades, one large, one small. And then you're going to have a whole new Confederate division of a different corps, Rhodes' division of Ewell's Corps. They show up on Oak Hill. Trust me, it's off in the distance, even if you can't see it, okay? So now the Confederate line is like this, with Heath over there, Rhodes over there, and the Union's got 1 division. But wait, here comes Doubleday's 1st Corps division. Here comes Robinson's 1st Corps division over there on Oak Ridge as well. So the Union line is already taking on an interior set with the Confederates sort of wrapping around them there. The Confederates will eventually push the Union away from this ridge over here. We're finally getting to see it, Mcpherson's Ridge. You can see the Mcpherson barn standing off in the distance there. The Union will be pushed back, namely by Pettigrew and Archer. They'll fall back, but then up comes another Confederate division. Here comes Pender's Confederate division, Scales and Lane and Perrin and Thomas, and they're going to push toward the seminary. The reason I'm talking about all this is that this will figure into another video we're going to do as well. Now, right where we're standing here is where you have a brigade under the command of a guy named Stone, and we're going to hear about him in a moment. That's going to do an interesting action here in an interesting shape. We'll hear about that from Kris White. But first, I want to bring on a good friend of ours. This is Eric Money. He's from the Addressing Gettysburg podcast, and I have 2 questions for him. First of all, Eric, what's the Addressing Gettysburg podcast?
So what we do is we focus on anything and everything Gettysburg. It doesn't necessarily have to be battle related. It can be any point in Gettysburg's history. Like we've had Garry and Tim Smith come on to talk about the post-war development of the battlefield itself. That was, I think, like a 3.5-hour long episode. They can talk for a long while. But we've done some pre-war things as well. Anything up through the modern era. We also do a weekly live show talking about current events in Gettysburg.
Good, good. Thanks, Eric. And then I also know you are, I may say, obsessed with Stone's Brigade, with the Bucktails here. So only one question. Kris is going to get into them a little bit, but why do you like the Bucktails so much?
Well, I like Stone's Brigade specifically. My 4th great-grandfather was in Company H, 149th Pennsylvania, and he was killed out here on July 1st. So that's
Wow.
my connection.
So you've got a connection that I can't possibly have with this battlefield. Dude, we'll see you around. Check out the Addressing Gettysburg podcast as we go around, and add it to your playlist, and I think you're going to be happy with what you find over there. Now I think I'm going to hand it over to another person you see a lot of on here. He is the Deputy Director of Education here at the American Battlefield Trust. We are talking about Kris White of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And someone's going to grab the camera from him now. It looks like it's Sarah K. Bierle grabbing the camera.
I also need a microphone.
Hey, take it away, Kris.
All right, thanks, Gary. Sorry, playing round robin out here, being tech guy, historian, all kinds of different things. Let me just mic myself up. Welcome to live television. Okay. So thanks everybody for watching. We're out here on the Gettysburg battlefield. We're on the Mcpherson Ridge. There's no fear in Mcpherson. It's Mcpherson's Ridge. The Mcpherson farm is right over behind me. That's owned by Edward Mcpherson in 1863, though he does not live here. That house is actually going to be lived in by John Slentz, who's renting the home. What you're seeing behind us is the barn. That's the only existing wartime structure of the Mcpherson farm. The home itself would have actually sat down in a small saddle here along the Chambersburg Pike, modern day Route 30. And you'd also seen a wagon house out there, obviously an outhouse. You'll have some other outbuildings. But that barn, or the home itself, will burn, I believe, in the 1890s. But the John Slentz farm is, or the Mcpherson farm, which is lived in by the Slentz family, is one of those stories from the Gettysburg battlefield. That is a very prominent feature even to this day. The bucktails, as they are known, as the 149th, 150th Pennsylvania, the 2nd and 3rd bucktails, known sometimes as the bogus bucktails by some, they will put up a defensive line around the Mcpherson farm. They'll also have the 143rd Pennsylvania, who's part of their brigade. They're technically not bucktails, though they'll be part of the bucktail brigade itself. So the Slentz family, who are inside of there, get out of town and they run away towards Baltimore Pike. They'll stay on Baltimore Street during the battle. And then when they come back to their farm and see all of the action that had taken place out here, they'll find the barn itself filled with wounded soldiers and dead soldiers. The Slentz family will actually live for the next 2 months in Schmucker Hall, which is owned by the Lutheran Theological Seminary, and that's the home of the Seminary Ridge Museum and Education Center today. John Buford climbed up into the cupola, looked out there on June 30th and July 1st. The Slentz family will actually live out in there. So we have civilian stories out here. We also have stories of soldiers from both sides. To start off, we'll talk about the bucktails. The 149th Pennsylvania, they have a monument that sits just across the street from us. The 149th has 3 monuments here on the battlefield at Gettysburg. One here on the first day's field, one over on the third day's field near the climactic Pickett's Charge, and then another along West Confederate Avenue, right at the opening of West Confederate Avenue and the Fairfield Road, modern day Route 116. So the bucktails, when they come out here, they will arrive in the afternoon. There's fighting out here on the morning of July 1st. That will be between the Iron Brigade, Archers Brigade, and then there'll be a big reshuffling over in this area, and some of Cutler's Brigade. There'll be a big reshuffling. The Iron Brigade will largely go into Herbst Woods. Today, some people call it the Mcpherson Woods. Others will call it Reynolds Woods. At the time, it's known as the Herbst Woods, owned by John Herbst. In there will be the Iron Brigade. And then coming out into this open land will be the bucktails. And they're going to have to form a very weird angle. Some of the bucktails will be facing out to the west, to my left, while others are facing to the north. Why is that? Gary pointed out the fact that Robert Emmett Rhodes, a Norse god, according to Douglas Southall Freeman, arrives on the battlefield, places 8,500 men directly to the north of us, and then starts deploying Thomas Carter's battalion of artillery, which will fire down into this direction. Also coming in from the west will be artillery fire, fired by Willie Pegram, a UVA graduate. He looks more like a professor than he is an actual artilleryman. Willie will die about a week short of the surrender at Appomattox. His brother John will die on land preserved by the American Battlefield Trust down at Hatcher's Run. But this is going to be an artillery crossfire, some coming in from Hare's Ridge out to the west, some coming in from Oak Hill and Oak Ridge to the north. So down into this little area will be the 149th Pennsylvania. Some of those guys, Company D, are from my hometown of McDonald, Sturgeon, out in western Pennsylvania. And their Colonel, Lieutenant Colonel Walton Dwight will say, or the commanding officer will say, man, this is a bad area to be in. What should we do? This is really their first big battle. Even though they served at Chancellorsville, they really don't see much action. So he decides, Dwight does, is to send the color company or the color guard out into this vicinity. They're supposed to go out about 50 yards from the regiment, out behind me, and they are going to take some fence rails. They're going to take some allegedly railroad ties. There's a few different accounts, and they're going to put up a little mini fortification. They're going to plant 2 flags out here, the national flag and the state flag, and they are going to duck down about a half dozen or so men out here. The idea was those flags would be the target for that Confederate artillery crossfire to come in on. Now, put yourself in the shoes of these basically half dozen men. You've been placed 50 yards out into a no man's land. You are the forlorn hope. You're supposed to sit out here and accept artillery fire. This is not a place you want to be on a battlefield, especially breaking away from their units. But as the fight goes on throughout the day, Confederates will start to surge up the Chambersburg Pike. Those will be more of Henry Heath's division. And then out in this area, some Confederates from the 42nd and 2nd Mississippi will look out here and they'll say, man, those flags are not doing anything. There's no fire going out to the front. There's Confederates pushing in from the north under Junius Daniel, North Carolinians, 5 large regiments. We have Virginians swinging in through here, some North Carolinians as well, but those flags aren't moving. So a couple Confederates start to creep out here. One's named Price, and he is going to say that, man, in fact, there's only a half dozen Union soldiers out there. This is a ruse. They decide they're going to make a grab for those flags. So Franklin Lehman, who's going to be holding one of those flags, which will be the national colors, it will turn into a hand-to-hand combat. Lehman out here, who's in charge of the color company, or this color guard, is going to send one man back and say, find out where the regiment is. That man never returns. Because in the meantime, as these men are sitting out here as this forlorn hope, the Confederates have swept up over top of this position. And jumping up into this area will come those Mississippians. And they will jump up here and try to grab the flag. It turns into a hand-to-hand combat out on this battlefield. Lehman will, someone will say, this is going to be my flag, to paraphrase them, and Lehman will say, not by a long shot. They'll shoot one of the Confederates. Another Confederate will be bayoneted. One will be brained by the butt of a musket. And Lehman will take his flag and he will run hell for leather across this field, trying to get out of here. Unfortunately for him, when he goes back to the old position of the 149th, there's no one there but Confederates. And he tries to run down into the low ground when he is shot, trying to get back towards Seminary Ridge and getting off of this battlefield itself. The next flag will try to be extracted from this battlefield, and it is unfortunately not going to make it off the field itself either. The national colors, I believe, of the 149th is captured by the 55th North Carolina, while I believe the 2nd Mississippi takes the other flag off the field out here. Only one man from that color company made it off of this battlefield unscathed out of that color guard, and it was the man who was sent to the rear to find out where the 149th went to. He never returned with that message that the 149th had pulled off here. They lost both of their flags, and the Bucktail Brigade is dislodged from this part of the battlefield. Now, not at the same time, a little bit earlier in the day, just north of us, through those trees, is the north side of the railroad cut. We will have the 55th North Carolina marching along. As they are marching along, they'll be part of Joseph Davis's brigade. Davis is a very famous name in the Confederacy. Jefferson Davis is the president of the Confederacy. His nephew is Joe Davis. So as our friend Doug Dowd says, nepotism is alive and well in the Confederate Army. Joe Davis's men are going to start pushing to the north along the railroad cut while John Connolly and his 55th North Carolina try to keep up with 2 other Mississippi regiments, the 42nd and the 2nd Mississippi. Connolly's men, 627 or so strong, going out across this field, will receive a volley from some Union soldiers, and Connolly will go down, wounded twice. His second in command, Alfred Bierle, runs over to him and asks him, what are your orders? Are you okay? And he says, stay ahead of the Mississippians. Unit rivalry is alive and well as well in the Confederate Army. And the North Carolinians, the Tar Heels, push forward, and they are going to start to engage with Lysander Cutler's men, some of the 147th New York, Francis Miller's regiment out there, and it is going to turn into a vicious battle. But Connolly, eventually will be extracted from this field. He'll lose a limb, and he is going to actually survive the war. And just to one of my rare times actually using notes to tell you exactly what happened to him, because he's one of my favorite people.
You sure you got this, Kris? You good?
I'm good. Amateurs. just to tell you what happens to him. Connolly's one of my favorite guys. He's paroled in March of 1864 because he's captured out here in Gettysburg. He's unable to take the field again, and he moves to Texas, then on to Virginia, where he goes into the state legislature. My favorite story from him, though, is when he is in the state legislature in Richmond, Virginia, the roof on April 27th, 1870 actually collapses. The entire gallery of the Virginia State House collapses. 61 people are killed in it, and 251 are injured. He amazingly survives the Battle of Gettysburg and survives this tragedy that took place in Virginia. Alfred Bierle will also survive. He will go on to found the Dallas Morning News down in Dallas, Texas. So they're both very successful men after the war. And during the war, the two of them are kind of hotheads, and they were insulted by another officer in another regiment about a battle that took place on the peninsula. They challenged the commanding officer of that regiment to a duel with Mississippi rifles at 10 paces. So these guys, pretty much hotheads, but luckily for both sides, they weren't great shots when they had that duel because they all survived. One last story I want to tell from this side of the road is the story of John Buford. Most people know John Buford from the movie Gettysburg, played by Sam Elliott. And this is a monument that actually sits at the base of John Reynolds' statue. John Reynolds, as you probably know, John Fulton Reynolds, the 1st Corps commander, he is well known out here on the battlefield at Gettysburg, and he's sitting on a horse. He's an infantry commander. We swing over here, and we see John Buford. He's standing there, not on a horse. So there's something probably wrong going on out here, we would think. James Kelly, who's a very prominent artist, and he made many monuments across many battlefields, was commissioned to come out here on the battlefield, and he is supposed to, John Kelly is supposed to create a monument in 1894, dedicated in 1895, of John Buford. Well, James Wilson, former cavalryman, is very upset, as well as a few others, because John Buford, one of the most famous horsemen in the United States Army during the American Civil War, is not on horseback. It's actually suggested by Wilson and a few others that James Kelly not attend the monument dedication here in 1895 because he would not be welcome because they didn't put this horseman on a horse. But when one of his classmates, John Tidball, one of Buford's classmates, said, "I went to West Point with him, I served in the Mexican-American War, that's John Buford." He said that is the best likeness of John Buford that he had ever seen. To tell you what Buford was wearing out here at Gettysburg, James Kelly went around and interviewed a bunch of his former officers. Jerome Wheeler, who commanded the 6th New York north of us, made a lot of money after the war, marries into the Macy's family, if you ever heard of them, and then hit it big in the Silver Rush out in Colorado, said Buford wore a pleated blouse on which what we would now call a Norfolk jacket used in England for hunting purposes. The skirt of the coat we should think would come down to the line where I have marked on the sketch with a pencil, and in front of the skirt should come together. The coat should hang easily. That is not to say the skirt below should fix snugly around his waist without making too many folds. At the same time, it should be easy. We are not sure whether any buttons are shown, but if they are shown in the uniform worn, he shows a picture of General Burnside to him, it will be all right to put them on the coat worn by General Buford. They also talk about him wearing a pair of pants, corduroy pants out here. They talk about him having basically a pipe sticking out of his shirt, though there was some question if he actually ever smoked a pipe or not, but they said that that was John Buford. He's standing out here above 4 guns. One of them is gun 233, and that was forged at the Phoenix Iron Works out in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, and it fired the first shot in anger for the Federals out here at Gettysburg. The day that that monument was dedicated, they went out to the War Department, or before it, they found 4 of the guns that opened the battle here at Gettysburg. 6 of John Califf's guns were out here, 3-inch ordnance rifles, and allegedly gun 233 belched the first shot from around this area. And Califf or Tidball, I can't remember which one, went up to the gun, spiked it, and said, "So that would speak no more." So if you come up here to Gettysburg, that is allegedly the best likeness of John Buford, even though he's not on horseback, and it's standing above some of the guns that opened the battle here at Gettysburg. 4 of them were positioned up here on Mcpherson's Ridge. 2 more were actually on the west side of Mcpherson, or the east side of Mcpherson's Ridge. John Purgle's section, 2 guns firing off towards Hare's Ridge. The reason they break up the guns up here is to fake the Confederates out, thinking that there'd be more Union artillery up here than there actually was. Willie Pegram outguns John Califf, but more guns will show up here, and that's a story for another time. Gary?
That's awesome, man. Kris White rocks, and I tend to agree. Let's walk a little bit here. Kris will grab the camera from Sarah soon, but first, let's get a little closer to a couple things Kris pointed out. A, we have to see that light. There's a B, we have to see this cannon tube, of course. So we'll walk over there. You're with the American Battlefield Trust. We're walking on the first day's battlefield where it actually occurred 159 years after it actually occurred. So here we are. It's going to get a little louder near the road, but we got our fancy lav mics. Hopefully you'll be able to hear. Let's walk around real quick. The tube here has a special plaque on it, the opening gun of the battle. Now this might seem, oh, people are just saying that, but you can look on the front and you can see the serial number. You can see it says PIC for the Phoenix Iron Company that Kris actually mentioned, PIC 1862. It was made before this battle. That's how much it weighs. That's the inspector's initials, and Craig Swain will be disappointed I can't remember it. And there's the 233rd gun to come out of that foundry that year. And there it is. We got the sun behind it, but there's your great likeness of John Buford. Well, let's see how we can do here. It doesn't look too bad, so I think we're going to cross the road in just a moment. But let me just note while we do that, it's great to see everybody on here, man. We have so many friends joining us and so many friends I've already banned. Looks like we got somebody almost waiting for us. I think he's going to turn here. So I've already banned numerous people. If somebody says they want to be your friend and they want you to message them, maybe don't take them up on that. And if they put a link in there with no information, maybe don't click on that one. But I am happy to see Gary Stroming, Phil Spoggy, Uli Bauman, Blake Chambers, Battlefield Guide, haven't seen him in forever, Jeff Palmer, Tim York, and so many other people. And apparently my beard is a thing this year, more than the hat. If you like the beard, say something. If you don't, don't. And as we're waiting to cross, let me say, man, do we have people sending us stars? I'm not sure exactly what that is. I'm a Facebook guy and I don't know what that is, but Facebook's trying to make it a big deal. We also have Florida, South Carolina, Georgia, New Hampshire, California, New York, Michigan, New Mexico, North Carolina, Mississippi, Pennsylvania, Brazil, and Germany. You would think they would beat the distance record, but welcome to you from Indonesia for coming out here. Last time I checked, we were 375 people live here, and share this with your friends. We can get this up to 500, as many people can share as possible. Now, let me walk a little further, then I'm gonna bring on, this is how I say it now, Sarah K. Bierle, to talk about something you may have heard a little bit about, maybe learned a little bit more. But we are walking on Mcpherson's Ridge. You've seen the barn over my shoulder, and all the monuments we're crossing on this little walk are basically from Stone's Brigade, that's the Bucktails, or the Iron Brigade that we're gonna talk about pretty soon. Now, one thing, a few years ago, we shot a video here, and let me just say that, go back and see our videos from Gettysburg 154, 55, 56, 57, and 58. If we're not covering what you want, I'm gonna wager that unless you're talking about a specific company of a specific regiment, we've probably covered what you are passionate about. And this video we shot was right here at this quarry up here. If Kris can look right past that monument, you see some sort of a raised grass there. This is a quarry here during the battle. Matthew Brady famously poses at this quarry right here, and we have pictures taken in both directions, and that's how we know that this area looked just like this. Having said that, we're going to continue to walk, but let me bring on Sarah K. Bierle. She is the Education Associate here at the American Battlefield Trust. So far, I've heard that you want my job, you want Kris's job. You're probably going to want hers too. Sarah?
Hello, thank you for joining us today for the 159th anniversary of the Battle of Gettysburg. We are walking toward the John Burns Monument, and we're going to chat about him for a few minutes. Many of you are probably familiar with John Burns. There are so many stories about this guy. It can be kind of hard to sort them out. I would recommend check out Tim Smith's book. It's called John Burns. Easy title to remember. That's going to be a lot of information that you can check out. And, sorry, readjustment there. I'm new to this, but I'm trying.
I'm just trying not to get hit with that car.
Absolutely. We don't want any so John Burns is 69 at the time of the Battle of Gettysburg. He'll be 70 when he meets Abraham Lincoln. So that's kind of where we sometimes get different stories about how old he was. He's a civilian who lives in the town of Gettysburg. In fact, he had been the constable or policeman for the town or the community, but By the time of the battle, he had lost an election, so he wasn't the constable anymore. He was actually working as a cobbler at Kendall Hart's shoe factory or shoe store. So this older guy, he gets really upset, according to his own version of the story. On June 26th, when the Confederate cavalry comes into the town of Gettysburg, something happened with his cows. Either the Confederates milked the cows or they drove them off or something. It seems like John Burns himself wasn't quite clear about what happened in his story, but he's upset, and on July 1st, he decides to don an old blue coat, an outdated black hat, and grab a flintlock musket, and against the advice of his wife, comes out here to the area around Seminary Ridge and starts asking different units if he can join them on their battle line. It becomes quite the story. He does fight for a little bit of time with some of the units from the Iron Brigade. He'll be wounded about 3 times. He's treated by some military surgeons, and then he starts making his way back toward town. He gets to one place and he calls to a neighbor, a friend that he supposedly knows, and he's asking him, go home, tell my wife I need her to get a wagon and come get me. So this neighbor follows through with the request, but Mrs. Burns just said, I told him not to go out and fight. And apparently she did not get the wagon to bring him home. Some other neighbors helped him return home, and he becomes quite the celebrity, the local celebrity. He's the recognized civilian who goes out and fights in the Battle of Gettysburg. And he'll actually meet President Lincoln on November 19th, 1863. They'll walk down the street together as they're heading to a church to hear Charles Anderson give what's sometimes referred to as the Third Gettysburg Address. So that's a little bit about John Burns. As I was doing some reading on him this week and a little bit of writing, I came to the conclusion I think he might be that grumpy neighbor that we don't want in real life, but he was certainly a real person. He was out here doing what he saw as his patriotic duty. He'll actually be mentioned in Abner Doubleday's report. So he definitely catches the eye of a lot of military men, and they'll write down things that he told them or observations that they made about him.
Good, thanks, Sarah. You're with the American Battlefield Trust. We are checking out the first day's battlefield on the ground where it actually happened. It's one of the beautiful things about battlefields. We can actually come back to the places where it actually happened. We can stand where the photos were taken. We can walk in the footsteps of the soldiers. And we are up above 410 people sharing this experience with us. Share this with your friends. Let's get up to 500 if we can before we go off, because we have a little bit more to talk about. Now, Sarah just gave this great summation of John Burns. Man, was he the most famous dude in America for a brief period of time. And it's a pretty good likeness of him as well, from what I can tell. What most people don't know about this monument, we'll only be able to barely see it, I think, as we go, is that this road that we just walked down used to come straight where this monument is, okay? Cars weren't around yet. Carriages could go and turn, 90 degrees with no big deal. So this monument used to be over here. And then when they moved the road and straightened it out so that cars could handle it, they had to move the monument forward so it was closer to the road. But if you look in the winter, you're not supposed to climb fences here at Gettysburg. If you look in the winter, and even in the summer, I can see a little patch there. You'll see a John Burns rock-sized patch of concrete and gravel right over there. I think Kris has got it right in his stead. No, that's not a tall selfie stick. That is his extendo gadget arms getting him up that high. Now, something we haven't talked very much about yet are 2 incidents real quick, and we're not going to get into the whole Iron Brigade. We've covered that extensively on a whole bunch of other lives, but we will walk toward where they fought. Now remember, a lot of people think that Archer and Davis, the initial attack, comes in here, they fight the Iron Brigade, and then everything is great, right? And then up comes Heath, hey, victory. That's not how it happens at all. Of course, it doesn't go well for Archer. He falls back, the Iron Brigade swaps some units around, and then they are going to fall back through those woods. Later, when Pettigrew comes up and they start pushing against all the Union resistance of the First Corps that they can offer, you are going to have eventually the Confederates enter these woods here. That's when Harry Heath comes up. Harry Heath, I think has already lost his hat, and he has secured a new hat. That hat was too big, so he now famously, rolled newspaper up into it and was shot in the head, okay? Supposedly right over here. And he shot in the head, and it hit it right in the hat band and right where the newspaper was, resulting in a concussion rather than death for General Heath. It would be another division commander lost for Robert E. Lee. Supposedly it happened right at the edge of these woods. Now, back in the 1980s, the park historian Kathy George Harrison went and determined from the accounts that it appeared it happened right over here near where a tree stands. Okay, I don't even know if it was a witness tree, but it was a big tree. People started calling that the Heath tree. And then when the Heath tree fell down 20 years ago or so, I remember it, you know, people started saying, oh my God, the witness tree, the Heath tree is gone. The Heath tree is a post-war, in fact, a century later fabrication to describe the approximate location, which was indeed apparently right over there. Now, let me see whether Kris or Sarah has anything to add. Kris is smirking. That means I either made a mistake or he's got something amusing to add.
Albert Finney, Johnson stomping.
Do you want the mic or are you good? Okay, good. Sarah, you good? Everybody, this is our first live. We hope we have equal felicity in connectivity, hashtag felicity connectivity, on all of our lives around the battlefield. We really are glad you joined us. We will be elsewhere on the first day's battlefield before long, and then elsewhere on the first day's battlefield before long, while also uploading some of the videos we've already shot. I can't thank Ancestry Fold 3 enough. Thanks to the Addressing Gettysburg podcast, and thanks to the Gettysburg National Military Park for keeping this place as great as it looks right now. Thanks, Kris. Thanks, Sarah. Thank you all for watching and for supporting battlefield preservation and education.